Fellow Americans, I hope you had a fantastic weekend. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States. Want to be on the program? 877-973-7425 is the number. If you text Eric, E-R-I-C-K. If you text that to 33777, you can get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, a whole lot more. Glad to have you with me. We've got to begin with the fallout of the Stephen Colbert cancellation. It's actually become high comedy in my mind, watching a group of people who know nothing speculating on why Stephen Colbert was or was not canceled. The media just can't help running into its own like birtherism or trutherism stuff. And I want to make a point here that I don't want to be insulting to any of you. But I got to make this point. It's a very important point. You must understand this point to go on. I don't care your view of the 2020 election, whether you think the election was stolen or not. It doesn't matter to me if you think the 2020 election was stolen or not. For purpose of this conversation, what you need to understand is that the major American media outlets believe the election was not stolen, and that anyone who comes on television who insists the election was stolen must be held to account for lies. You've got to understand that whether you think the election was stolen or not, the vast overarching national American press corps does not, and believes if you believe it was stolen, you're a liar and you're participating in a lie. Stephen Colbert's cancellation is to the media what the stolen election is to you. They don't care what you think. They insist Stephen Colbert was canceled because of Donald Trump. They insist he was canceled because of Donald Trump. My buddy Noam Blum put up this tweet, and it's a screenshot from a CNN story. Now, the CNN story was written by Brian Stelter, and this is the key quote. CBS insiders insist, even when speaking frankly on condition of anonymity, that the move was financially driven, not politically motivated. Many observers have huge doubts about that, given that Colbert has been an outspoken critic of President Trump. Now, Brian Stelter responded to Noam Blum. He said, do you not see all the observers who are expressing huge doubts, from senators to columnists to late-night veterans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? By the way, Brian Stelter, let's be honest here. You and I both know you think this was related to Donald Trump. You are a stolen election conspiracy theorist. You and your colleagues in the media are stolen election conspiracy theorists. There are, to your standard here, do you not see all the observers who are expressing huge doubts, from senators to columnists to late-night veterans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? See, there are senators who believe the 2020 election was stolen. There are columnists who believe the 2020 election was stolen. There are veterans of elections and politics who believe the 2020 election was stolen. And you, Brian Stelter, have regularly insisted, based on the evidence, that the election was not stolen. And you, Brian Stelter, and your friends in the press have regularly insisted on accountability for anyone who claimed the 2020 election was stolen. By your own written word, Brian Stelter, you write, CBS insiders insist, even when speaking frankly, on condition of anonymity, that the move was financially driven, not politically motivated. There is, in other words, exactly zero evidence that Stephen Colbert was canceled because of the President of the United States. But because you and your friends in your bubble are convinced he was, you're willing to give credence to a story that is a lie because you believe the lie. And you will not hold yourselves in the media accountable in the way you would hold people accountable on the right if they came on your network and said the election in 2020 was stolen, because you're a bunch of hypocritical progressives who refuse to acknowledge that your worldview is of the left. You believe the things the left tells you, and it doesn't matter what all the evidence says. If you believe it to be so, like a boy can become a girl, you're going to believe it, and you're going to bully anyone who disagrees with you. You're going to lecture anyone who disagrees with you, and you're going to do some experts say, and some observers say, and outside observers say, there's no evidence for this. And you can't hold yourself to the standard that you hold everyone else to, Brian. You can't hold yourself to the standard that everyone in the media holds the right to. If anyone in the right comes along and says something you people in the press reject, you lecture them, you bully them, you censor them, you embarrass them, you drown them out. But when you come along and you believe something that none of the evidence shows is true, you not only believe it, but you're dismissive of the evidence. The Wall Street Journal noted that the Stephen Colbert show was costing CBS $100 million a year. It was losing advertising revenue and lost $40 to $50 million a year. And half the money in those losses were Colbert's salary. Puck News, Matthew Maloney, who was the original guy writing at Puck News, who highlighted the losses. Let me just read you this. No one can know for sure. All I can tell you is what I'm hearing. Several sources at both CBS and Skydance insist the decision was based on economics, not politics. After all, if this was about appeasing Trump, they argue, cheeks would have pulled Colbert off the air ASAP rather than giving him 10 more months of the chair. Trust me, there's no conspiracy. A very good source close to Colbert told me last night. Again, a very good source close to Colbert said. Still, two other people with deep ties to CBS and Late Show suspect otherwise. After all, when a network decides that a show is too expensive, executives typically go to the key town and ask them to take pay cuts, fire people, or otherwise slash costs. That didn't happen here, though with Colbert said to be making between 15 and 20 million a year, a pay cut wouldn't have solved the problem on its own. And given the company's willingness to fold to Trump, there's no reason for you or me to think they would stand up to any political pressure or resist any specific demand. If Chris McCarthy, Cheek's counterpart on cable TV, cancels The Daily Show, I think we'll have a good idea what's going on. But for now, I cautiously and skeptically believe this was mostly an economic decision. Literally multiple press outlets have been met with ringing on the record, off the record, and on background denials about Stephen Colbert being canceled because it was political. And why would they give him another 10 months if they were doing it to placate Donald Trump? Everyone says this was financial. Hacks is a TV show on streaming on HBO Max. And the entire last season of the TV show was about Jean Smart's character wanting a late night show. And she gets it. And the network finally tells her, with some difficulties between her and her staff, that it was either her or moving on because late night doesn't make money anymore. Late night doesn't make money anymore. I mean, this happened well before Colbert. There's an entire plot line of a major streaming show that's very popular with the industry about whether or not to give a 60s retiring comedian a late night show or cancel it altogether because the genre is not making money and the networks are ready to move on for it. But lo and behold, it happens now, and all these people, Brian Stelter at CNN and the rest of it, it's got to be about Trump. I don't care that literally everyone who knows anything about it refuses to acknowledge it's about Trump. I know it's about Trump, and I'm an arrogant know-it-all on TV, and it must be true. What they can't acknowledge, what Brian Stelter will never write, what none of these people will cover, is that between NPR and PBS or Stephen Colbert, the left has alienated and marginalized themselves so much within culture, they can't make anything work without subsidy. On weekends, MSNBC has less than 90,000 viewers out of a nation of 300 million people. 90,000 viewers. Comcast wants to get rid of them. Warner Brothers is ousting CNN. As the networks have gone to the left, including CNN, They're not making good money anymore. They're not as profitable as they would have you believe. They're dwindling in numbers. They're dwindling in revenue. The hosts have been making a lot of money, and they're very costly. And in their arrogance, they can't understand why. And the story is a perfect encapsulation of the arrogance of the media. That if you come on and you claim the election was stolen in 2020, they're going to lecture you, vilify you, and censor you. You come on and say Stephen Colbert was canceled because of Donald Trump, they're going to give you a primetime hearing without much challenge, even though there's no one on or off the record who will acknowledge it was the case. This is the media stolen election. This is Brian Stelter's stolen election. This is the National Press Corps and the left's stolen election. Molly Young Fast, who is a singularly Nepo baby, Lucky Sperm Club winner who goes on MSNBC and pontificates about the left. She's not spectacularly accomplished, but she has a mommy and a daddy with connections who could get her on TV, and now comes on as a dim-witted commentator that also explains how the left depends on subsidy and nepotism to be able to get ahead. She went on MSNBC and had this to say.
So you wrote about this, and you say Colbert's cancellation, simply not funny.
Yes, simply not funny, but also really scary, right? And even if it's not quid pro quo, the idea of self-censorship, and I talk about my grandfather, Howard Fast, who was jailed by McCarthy during the House on Un-American Activities, that our government has done this before, that history is very much filled with moments like this. And I think it's important that we take a 20,000-foot view of it because of that, because there are ways to come back from government misuse of power like this. But it certainly is very scary. I do think it's incredibly ironic and also interesting that we have a 94-year-old media mogul who is in many ways responsible for creating Trump and Trumpism, who is now facing down Trump and Trumpism.
You got that? Her grandfather was jailed by McCarthy, and Stephen Colbert is something like that. There's no evidence, none. And yet this is the media narrative. This is their stolen election. They don't think the 2020 election was stolen. Many of you do. They are convinced beyond all reason that Stephen Colbert was canceled because of Donald Trump, and there's no evidence for it anywhere in the record or off the record, but they are convinced of it. And look at how they will treat themselves and pat themselves on the back and elevate themselves over their conspiracy theories about Stephen Colbert, and look at how they've treated the people who think the election was stolen. Look at the hypocrisy there. What they can't acknowledge is that they require government subsidy. PBS and NPR, it's a threat to democracy that they're being gotten rid of. There are plenty of for-profit news channels out there that do better jobs, but it's a threat to democracy. It's not really a threat to democracy. It's a threat to them. It's a threat to Democrats. It's a threat to the left. They can't acknowledge how isolated they've become, how much in a bubble they've become, and they have decided now they rely on subsidy, whether it's CBS paying Stephen Colbert a lot of money to lose them money, or the American taxpayers paying a lot of money so someone can shove their hand up the rectum of a puppet to lecture Americans on feelings. The left is required subsidy. They demand it of you, and they hold you to a different standard than themselves. Mark Halperin had this conversation. He Sean Spicer and others on his show.
So mine's similar to that, which is the left's presumption that they can dominate asymmetrically, dominate the media. Stephen Colbert turned his show into a nightly anti-Trump program. NPR and PBS, as Caroline Levitt well documented, they're just attack machines to the Democrats, and they have lost their ability to have these asymmetrical advantages. Huge loss for them, and a huge loss to the Democratic Party, which relied on these advantages as just millions.
Mark, you're scrubbing at something that is, or scratching at something that is so profound, because I've argued for the longest time that Democrats have had a hold on all of these mega institutions, right?
Yeah.
You're right. You got Colbert, NPR, PBS starting to fall, but then it's the alternative economy where Republicans have learned, okay, well, if you don't want to get debanked by Bank of America, build your own bank. If you want a currency, go to crypto. And this is what happened with the media and the rise of talk radio and then podcasts. But the left, their domination of academia, Hollywood, corporate America is 100%. Getting shipped away because they jumped the shark on so many things.
100%.
They have. And then they demanded you and I cover it. And when we don't, they demand it's a conspiracy about us. The left is incapable of holding itself, and that includes the members of the mainstream media, is incapable of holding themselves to the same standard they hold the right to. If you or I or anyone else went on television and said the 2020 election was stolen, they would berate us, ridicule us, mock us, censor us. But you can have an entire TV network running wall-to-wall news coverage that Stephen Colbert was canceled because of Donald Trump with zero evidence, with everyone who knows anything about it insisting it's not so, and all the people who don't know anything about it insisting it is so, and the know-nothings they elevate in that particular case because they are broken, and if they recognized it otherwise, they would have to acknowledge they can't exist without subsidy anymore.
Have something to say?